welcome to another hour of American Voices. Hello, everyone. I'm Alicia Menendez, back with you from Miami tonight. And we begin with the incumbent president and the Democratic presidential nominee entering the final stretch of the 2020 race, stumping today across key battlegrounds. Right now, President Trump is in Nevada making a play for the state, which he narrowly lost in 2016. And like we've seen so many times before, supporters packed in as COVID continues to surge across America. As for Joe Biden, he campaigns by way of car rally today in North Carolina, taking a pit stop to slam the president's handling of the pandemic. Here he is.
They see folks at the top, they're doing better than ever, while they're left to wonder, who's looking out for me? Well, that's Donald Trump's presidency. More than 217,000 Americans dead because of COVID-19. Nearly 4,000 here in the state of North Carolina.
And by all accounts, a majority of Americans agree with the former vice president. The latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll finds 57% of voters disapprove of President Trump's handling of COVID-19. And with that, no telling where this race could go in the next 16 days. With me now, Lorella Praeli. She's the president of Community Change Action and was the Latino outreach director for Hillary Clinton in 2016. MSNBC contributor Brittany Packnett-Cunningham is an activist and host of the new podcast, Undistracted. Go and subscribe to that now. And David Jacobson, co-founder of J&Z Strategies. He also worked on Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential primary bid. Thank you all so much for being here. Dave, ordinarily, this is when you would see President Trump, Joe Biden exclusively in battleground states. And yet we have seen the president instead detouring to some states that were once considered solidly red. What does that tell you about the state of his campaign?
It's flailing at the seams. I mean, it's clear that the president is on defense. He's down in key battleground states like Pennsylvania by double digits. And even in traditionally ruby red states like Arizona, Joe Biden is within striking distance, either plus a few points or minus a few points. And down ballot, you've got competitive races in the U.S. Senate and races like South Carolina, where Joe Biden isn't clearly leading, but he's also within striking distance. Again, in states like Georgia, historically have always gone red. So it's clear that Donald Trump's campaign is desperate. He's struggling to raise the resources to be competitive with Joe Biden on television. And I think that really underscores the fact that this is a campaign in a downward tailspin.
Right. And I want to loop back to the question about television spending because it is so critical at this point in the race. But before I do, Brittany, part of that desperation is manifesting in the attacks that we're hearing from President Trump, right? The things that we're hearing about Governor Whitmer, the things that we're hearing some of his surrogates say about Senator Harris. What does that tell you about the thinking inside the Trump campaign?
Well, I agree. It shows an absolute level of desperation, but we have to be very clear that that desperation can be dangerous, that the only result here is not just an electoral one, but we are talking about people's lives. Yes, we are talking about people's lives who are put in danger when he opens up the doors to a massive hall or arena, asking people to come in, often unmasked, for his rallies. But we've also continued to see a sitting senator and a sitting governor, both women, continue to be put in danger by the things that are being put out by this campaign. We've seen Trump's war room today try to tweet that during an interview, Governor Whitmer sent a secret signal to have the president assassinated. It couldn't obviously be further from the truth. And yet that kind of desperation is putting her and so many people like her in real danger. So it's going to be important for all of us not just to pay attention to the electoral outcome, but to make sure that our leaders of all stripes are really protected throughout this.
Lorella, you look at the national polling, and it would seem that Joe Biden has this in the bag. There is, of course, the question of how people vote in this election, which ordinarily is a question of itself, a question now made more complicated by the realities of this pandemic. As an alum of the Hillary Clinton 2016 campaign, when you see the Biden campaign saying, hey, everybody, do not become complacent, do not look at these polls and think that this thing is done, what does that say to you? What memories does that evoke?
It grounds me in how critical the moment that we are in is, and we can't let our foot off the gas, right? So even though we've seen the early vote numbers show that 8% of early voters had never casted a ballot before, and 13.8% had voted in half or fewer of previous elections for which they were eligible, I still feel cautiously optimistic. And so we can't, for the next 2 weeks and 2 days, get distracted, get overconfident, think that it's actually in the bag, because it's not until we're through this period. I see our folks on the ground working to turn out low-income voters of colors, Latinos, Black voters, young people, and they are so focused that it's a reminder to all of us to do everything that we can from our house, from our household, or wherever you are in the world right now, to ensure that we turn out this election, that we define what the governing mandate is by ensuring that our folks turn out at the polls.